Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back. It's Friday. It's the last day this week because it's not the last day of this workshop because we're continuing next week, which is an awesome news. In order to start today, please join me in prayer. Good evening, Heavenly Parent. Good evening, true parents. Today is the 8th day of this online workshop, and we'd like to start it together with you, and we'd like to invite you here. I can see so many bright faces on the Zoom, and I also can't wait what Uncle William has to say to us today. And I really hope that you can talk through him and that you feel welcome here today. So yeah, I'd just like to open today with this short prayer. And I pray this in my name, Sandra Skrutsky from the Central Family Jew. Let's welcome back Uncle William for today's first lecture.
Hey, thank you, Sandra. So good evening. Wonderful to see so many of you here again. Some new faces as well, which is always nice. So yesterday, it was yesterday, we looked at the story of Abraham and Isaac. And as I said, we're right at the very, very beginning last week, I explained about the importance in stories in shaping people's lives. Not just individuals' lives, but also stories shape the lives of spiritual communities. Stories shape the life of nations. Stories shape everything. And when we think about ourselves, our identity is structured as a narrative. And so our own spiritual community then has been structured and constituted by many stories. And in particular, the stories that we find in the Bible, because these are the stories that the divine principle concentrates on and analyzes. And yesterday I looked at the story of Abraham and Isaac. And if you think back, how this story has been used within our own spiritual community, it's been used in quite a powerful way sometimes. I don't know if it's been used in a very healthy way or very helpful way, to be perfectly honest, because and I think the meaning was misunderstood, because it was all about recovering one's identity as opposed to being all about sacrifice. So another story which make a big impact in our spiritual community has been the story of Cain and Abel. So yesterday I retold that again in a different way, and I brought out what Father's own comments and own commentary on the story of Cain and Abel, explaining that very clearly that it wasn't only Cain who had fallen nature, but also Abel had bags of fallen nature. And so what we want to do then is rethink a little bit about Cain and Abel. So this is something a father said not very long before he died, actually. He said, "What impressed me recently is that only I have discovered and clarified that the principle of Cain and Abel is a fundamental principle of the cosmos. If one understands this principle, one understands 70% of the secret of the cosmos. All relationships in the cosmos are based on the principle of Cain and Abel. And where should be the center of it? It is exactly in the middle." So sometimes people say, "Oh, we don't need to talk about Cain and Abel anymore. The age of Cain and Abel is all finished, it's all past." But Father said, actually, it's a fundamental principle of the cosmos. And a long time ago, just a minute, what's happened here? 1975, in fact, Father said, if you have the wrong idea of the relationship between Cain and Abel, it's apt to lead you nowhere, or to the place opposite where you should be. So first of all, Father said it's an incredibly important principle. But also at the same time, he said, if we don't understand this relationship or this principle properly, instead of helping us to overcome our fallen nature and to be liberated and come into a good, better relationship with God, actually it may lead us to the place opposite to where we should be. And so we think about Cain and Abel as about overcoming fallen nature, but sometimes when people practice it in inverted commas and talk about it, often I've always had the feeling instead of helping people to overcome their fallen nature, it actually reinforced their fallen nature. So for me, one of the stories I like best, one of the principles I like best when I first heard the principle when I was 18, 1975, was actually the story of Cain and Abel. I loved listening to Cain and Abel because through that it helped me to understand myself, it helped me to understand other people, it helped me to understand relationships and why so many problems took place. And I really found it so interesting looking at the stories and analyzing stories of Cain and Abel. But within about 6 months, I found it's one of the things that members like to talk about least. There's only one other thing which they like to talk about even less than Cain and Abel, and that was indemnity, which I also think was seriously misunderstood. And again, I explained, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? Now, again, anyway, this week I talked about indemnity and, what it actually says in the book. And I think the way it's been, used within our community has been wrong and it's been misunderstood. And I'd say the same with this idea of the principle of Cain and Abel as well. So let's have a look at it, because it's really important, as Father said, to understand it properly. So it's always very good. You might notice when I teach, I just like slabbing up paragraphs, either from the Divine Principle book or from Father's speeches, because I think it's really interesting to actually see what the book says, or to analyze what did Father actually say, and to base one's discussion around the text, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer using PowerPoint now, because in the olden days, when one lectured just with a whiteboard, you just stood there and spoke, and you might have a few Bible quotes in your head, and that's why I think people did a lot of teaching, but they weren't actually lectures and teaching which are rooted in the text, which I think is really important. So I think I mentioned this before. Anyway, so it all goes back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were supposed to make the foundation of faith, which is to obey the commandment, observe the commandment, develop their spiritual life, follow their conscience, and maintain their sexual purity. It's the foundation of faith. And the foundation of substance was to become the incarnation, the embodiment of the Word of God, which meant they should reach maturity or completion or perfection, whatever you want to call it. So if they'd reached maturity, if they'd reached completion, if they'd become perfect, they would have become the lords of creation. And they would have won the love and the respect of the angels. And the angels are part of the creation. The archangel was a created being. Adam and Eve were supposed to become the lords of creation, which means becoming the lords of the angels as well. So in order to do that, they had to win the love and respect of the angels. The angels were free beings. They were spiritual beings, like Adam and Eve were spiritual beings, except they just didn't have a physical body. Well, they had a very, very similar kind of inner life, an inner world. And Adam and Eve had to win their respect. So that's what it says here. What does Adam have to do? First, he has to become one with God. That's through loving God, maintaining sexual purity. So he just becomes the incarnation of God's love. Second, he has to love the archangel. That becomes the Lord of creation and love the archangel. And he must win the archangel's recognition. The archangel must acknowledge, saying, you are truly the Son of God and therefore the heir apparent. So in that sense, the Father sometimes said, you actually, in order to go to heaven, you need to get the signature from Satan. That's what it means. You have to win the birthright. You can't steal it. You have to be given it. And the archangel had to acknowledge Adam is God's heir. And I talked about that yesterday. Abel, instead of going around thinking, oh, God accepted my offering, therefore I'm better than Cain. Big mistake. And that's why he got himself killed. Just because you have been anointed and appointed, it doesn't mean you can go around behaving the way you want to behave, like a dictator. You actually have to think, oh, well, how can I win the love and respect of my older brothers and my older sisters and bring together the family? Okay, so let's see what does it say in the book. This is what it says in the book. In relationships at every level of society, from those between individuals and to those at the level of families, communities, societies, nations, and the world, we find that one party is in the role of Abel and the other is in the role of Cain. So that's exactly what Father said again in 2011. All relationships then are constituted in terms of Cain and Abel. One party is the role of Abel and the other is in the role of Cain. So you have to think about that. What does that mean? Well, okay, one sense, Cain, it represents the archangel. Cain is the older brother, and Abel is the younger brother and represents Adam. So there's one aspect of the relationship. One is older and one is older and one is younger. But there's also another dimension to this relationship. One is relatively better at something, and one is relatively worse at something. So if you think about all relationships, they're all like that. So suppose you enjoy playing tennis. You play tennis with somebody you've never played with before, and within a few balls, you can tell who's better at tennis and who's worse at tennis. And the person who's better at tennis, you could say is Abel, the position of Abel. The person who's worse at tennis, you could say is in the position of Cain. And becomes very, very clear within a very short period of time who's better and who's worse. And that's just the way it is. It's the same with, between countries. Some countries are better at making cars than other countries. Some countries are better at doing this than other countries. That's that aspect as well. Older and younger, better at something and worse at something. And all relationships then, at every level of society, about that. So the important thing to do when you're trying to understand the principle of Cain and Abel is to put the whole unification church understanding and experience in a bracket. Yeah, because either the principle is true or it's not true. In that sense, the principle has got nothing whatsoever to do with the unification church. Either it's true or it's not true. It's like the laws of gravity. Either they apply universally or they don't apply anywhere. And so if we want to understand the principle of Cain and Abel, then we need to understand how it works and how it functions generally so that's why the examples I'm going to pick are not examples from within the unification church, but from within the wider society. So what does it say? This is what it says in the book. God teaches us that fallen people must constantly seek for an able type person. By honoring, obeying, and following him, we can accomplish God's will even without understanding every aspect of it. Okay, this is very theological. So let's try and make it more general. Instead of thinking about fallen people, let's think about you want to learn how to play the violin. So if you want to learn to play the violin, obviously you need a violin, but also you need a violin teacher. And so a violin teacher is not only somebody who knows how to play the violin, but it's also somebody who knows how to teach somebody else how to play the violin. And sometimes people can be brilliant players of the violin or brilliant at doing this, that, or the other, but very, very bad or don't have the skill to be able to teach another person how to do that. Okay, so supposing you have a violin teacher, then if you honor your violin teacher, if you respect your violin teacher, and you do what they tell you to do, so when your violin teacher tells you to put your fingers in one particular way, then you do that, and you imitate your violin teacher, you copy how he or she plays the violin, then you'll be able to learn how to play the violin, even without understanding every aspect of it. So you might wonder, well, why is my violin teacher telling me to put my fingers like this? It's really awkward to stretch my fingers like that. Why are they saying that? But maybe a few months or even years later, you might realize, oh, the reason why we put the fingers like that is so you can play these kind of notes, and it's actually much easier to play the violin doing it this way than it would be to doing it the way which I thought was easier at the very beginning. Yeah. So if you respect and you love and look up to your violin teacher because they're able, yeah, in that sense, because they're older than you, but at the same time they know how to play the violin, they know how to teach the violin. So if you respect them and you just listen to what they're saying, as I explained before, obeying just means listening to. You listen to them and you follow them, you do what and then you practice, you can accomplish God's will, or you can learn how to play the violin, and later you yourself will understand it and be able to explain it. If on the other hand, you don't like your violin teacher and you don't respect your violin teacher for whatever reason, then it's very hard to listen to your violin teacher, and it's very hard to do what they tell you to do, and you're always complaining, objecting, and arguing and coming up with other ways of doing things. And then it's very, very hard to imitate them, and you don't feel like practicing. And so at the end of the day, you won't learn how to play the violin. That's just the way it works. Honor, listen, imitate, or follow, and then you grow to love your violin and also your violin teacher. And so that's why the principle, it says, it's a universal tendency, nothing to do with the Unification Church. This is a universal tendency to seek out good leaders and righteous friends, stems from our innermost desire to come before God through an able figure who's closer to God. So, you know, if you like to have a bad leader, put your hand up. Nobody wants to have bad leaders. Because when you have a bad leader, then actually nothing ever gets accomplished. You need a leader, a good leader, who's able to organize things, everybody, and able to plan things and able to motivate things, so the task that this group is trying to accomplish is accomplished, and you end up with a sense of satisfaction. Yeah, it may not like your leader, but you need to have a good leader. Yeah, if you have a bad leader, it may be somebody you like, he may be very nice, but if he's not good at organizing, not good at planning, not good at motivating people, then the task doesn't get accomplished, you just get frustrated and time gets wasted. So everybody then is looking for a good leader, someone who they can follow and work together with this person, through whom they can learn lots, through whom they can grow, and through whom they can get this sense of accomplishment as an individual, but also as a group, and a sense of victory. Yeah, that's what we look for. We look for good leaders. If you have a bad leader, you get really frustrated and you feel like you're wasting your time, and instead of becoming a better person, you feel like you're becoming a worse person. The same, we want to have righteous friends. If we have righteous friends, if we have friends who are better than ourselves, then we feel elevated. We feel we naturally want to live up to the same standard as our friends if they have a better standard than ourselves. Yeah, so through that, we become a better person. We want to have friends who bring out the best in us. Good leaders bring out the best in us. Good friends bring out the best in us. And when we're with these kind of people, we feel like we're a better person because we're hanging out with these kind of people. Yeah. On the other hand, if we hang out with people who are not as good as us, less moral, less ethical, or of a coarser character, then you start to feel your own character declines. You start to feel that your fallen nature comes out more. You start uniting not with your original nature with these people, but more on the basis of your fallen nature. You might start misbehaving, you might start swearing, you might start telling, rather crude jokes and all these sorts of things, just to, get in with these kind of people. Yeah. And then instead of becoming a better person, you feel like these people are bringing out the worst in me instead of the best in me. So this is just a universal thing. People like to be with people who are better than themselves. Not too bad, not much better, then you feel really uncomfortable. Yeah. And but you want to have people who are better than ourselves, and we can work together with these people. So the divine principle says this is, so when the divine principle talks about these relationships, it's always in a theological context. It's always about God and getting closer to God. But it's a much more universal principle than that. As Father said, all relationships in the cosmos are characterized by the Cain and Abel relationship. It's not always a religious thing. It's not always theological. It's just a general universal tendency which we can recognize within ourselves. Yeah. And so part of the aspect then is about younger and older brothers. So Cain is an older brother and Abel is a younger brother. So if we look and analyze a little bit the relationship between older brothers and younger brothers, this will help us to understand how the relationship between Cain and Abel ought to be. So supposing you're a younger brother or a younger sister, and you might look up to your older brother, and you think, wow, my older brother, he's bigger than me, he's got stronger than me, he's cleverer than me because he can do all sorts of things that I can't do. And if you're a younger brother, the tendency of a younger brother or sister is to look up to their older sibling, look up to the older sibling with respect and admiration, and sometimes almost like hero worship. So if a younger brother and sister looks up to their older brother in this kind of way, and how does the older brother or sister feel? They feel they love their younger brother or sister because their younger brother or sister is very lovable. The younger brother or sister always looking up to them with respect and with admiration and saying nice things about them and listening to them. And so then naturally, the older brother or sister loves their younger brother. And so what a younger brother or sister has to do has to be lovable. If the older brother, Cain, is going to love Abel, the younger brother, then the younger brother has to be lovable. Yeah. Secondly, then the younger brother should be humble. Yes. And this is where it becomes a little bit more difficult, a little bit more intense. Now, supposing the younger brother is better at maths than the older brother. There's a little bit, usually the older brother or older sister is better at schoolwork and better at things because they're older. But sometimes you find the situation where actually the younger brother or sister is cleverer or has more ability than the older one. Okay, and then it becomes a little bit more awkward, a bit more intense sometimes. So supposing the younger brother, he's really good at maths, but still better than his older brother, but still he looks up to his older brother. So the older brother loves his younger brother. And if his younger brother is humble about his gifts and his abilities, then the older brother respects his younger brother and thinks, wow, my younger brother, he's so clever. Even though I'm older than him, he's actually better than me at maths. Or even though I'm older than him, he's actually better than me at tennis. And if the younger brother is humble about his qualities and his abilities, then it's very easy for the older brother to respect the younger brother, who's still very lovable. And then supposing the older brother gets stuck with his maths, then he might say, well, my younger brother's better at me at maths. I'm going to ask my younger brother, can you help me with my maths problem? And the younger brother, being very lovable and humble, will want to share and help his older brother with his maths. And so the older brother then wants to be guided by his younger brother about maths, or maybe about tennis or whatever it is. And then they think, okay, let's cooperate together. And so you get the situation here where brothers cooperate. They work together. They might set up a business together. They might realize, well, each of us has our own qualities. Each of us has our own abilities, but we complement each other and we can work together. We can go into business together. And that's a sort of natural thing. And then how does that work in the playground? Now, supposing they're both going to the same school and the older brother loves his younger brother. Now, supposing that the playground bully comes along and starts interfering with the younger brother, what does the older brother do? The older brother loves his younger brother, and so he goes and he confronts the bully because he was willing to protect his younger brother. Yeah, and he beats up the bully because he's there to protect his younger brother. He won't let anybody interfere with and bully his younger brother because he loves his younger brother. And of course, because his younger brother looks up to him, respects him, hero worships him. Yeah. And so, of course, this brings out the very best in the older brother as well. Yeah. So they bring out the best in each other. And that's the original nature of the older brother and the younger brother, like that. And so that's the way it should have been. Originally, the eldest should be better to say the oldest, should be the first when everyone goes to stand before God. But because of the fallen history, it's Abel who should be first. Cain will say, or Cain should say, Abel is better than me, and therefore he ought to go first. I'll follow after him and then meet God. It is Cain who will point out Abel. Abel cannot say, this person's my Cain. No? It is not Abel who decides the situation, but Cain. You have to work out among yourselves who is Cain and who is Abel. So you can imagine this situation, which I was looking at before, when the younger brother who's really talented and he goes and he wins a maths prize, or he goes and wins a violin prize, how does the older brother feel? He feels so proud of his younger brother or sister, yeah, because they won a prize. He goes around telling all his friends, my brother, my younger brother, I'm so proud of him. He's brilliant. He's much cleverer than I am. He's much more brilliant than I am. I'm so proud. He won this prize as well. Does that make sense? That's the way it should be. Yeah. The older will say, my younger brother is better than me. Yeah. He should go first. And it's Cain who points out Abel. So it's the older brother who says, my younger brother is better than maths than me. The younger brother cannot say, I'm better at maths than you. It's the same when you're playing tennis. Think about it. When you're playing tennis, it becomes very clear very soon who's better and who's worse at tennis. But who can announce who is better and who's worse? Yeah, the person who's Cain, the person who's worse at tennis, can say, you're better at tennis than me. The person who's better at tennis cannot say, I'm better at tennis than you. You can't boast. You have to be humble. Yeah, if you're able, if you're better at something, if you're younger, especially if you're younger and better, you have to be really humble. Yeah, and so that's why. Yeah, so that's why, usually. And so when you think about tennis again, sometimes we think about it. Usually, people would want to play tennis with somebody who's a bit better than them. Why do we want to play tennis with somebody who's better than us? Well, the reason is, well, if you play tennis with somebody, or any sport with someone who's better than you, it raises your game. It stretches you out of your comfort zone, so you are stretched to play tennis better than you normally would play. So when we play tennis with somebody who's better than us, actually our own game of tennis improves. Yeah. So that's why Cain searches for Abel, because Cain wants to improve, wants to learn how to play tennis better. If you're worse, you want to learn from somebody who's better than you. That's why we like to play tennis with somebody who's better than us. But of course, the person who plays better has to be humble, yeah, and magnanimous and generous. Can't go around boasting, yeah. And then at the end of the game, I mean, the thing about playing tennis with somebody who's better than you is you're going to lose. Usually, you just lose. That's just the way it is. But you don't mind losing if it's a good game. You don't mind losing if the person who you're playing against is a humble person, yeah. But, if you're playing against somebody who's really arrogant and proud and boastful, it leaves a bad kind of feeling. But if you're not as good at tennis as this person, you go and ask them afterwards, can you give me a few tips on how to improve my serve? Yeah. So you got this good tennis player, he's lovable, he's a nice person, he's humble, doesn't go around boasting how great he is at tennis. And then you're going to ask him, can you help me, give me some help and advice about how to improve my serve? And of course, he will do that. He will share his knowledge. Yeah. And then on that basis, you develop a friendship. That's what the last thing is. The last thing is unite. You develop a friendship. With a friendship, it's based upon love and respect. And you might become tennis partners or something. If, on the other hand, you're playing with a tennis player who's better than you, but really arrogant, first of all, they tell you, oh, I'm better than you. Secondly, they say, oh, you're a really rubbish player. I never want to play tennis with you ever again because you're so rubbish. And then I'm not going to help you because, etc. You can go and pay for some professional lessons. That kind of thing doesn't work out very well. So there's a fallen nature of Abel, which is to be arrogant and not to be lovable. And the fallen nature of Cain, which is, this guy's so arrogant, I'm going to go and break my tennis racket over his head. And that's why Father said, it's not Abel who decides the situation, but Cain. You have to work out among yourselves who's Cain and who's Abel. As I said, it becomes clear very, very quickly who's better at tennis, who's worse. It becomes clear very quickly who's better at this, or cooking, or witnessing, or praying, or teaching. Very clear. It becomes clear very quickly who's better and who's worse. And Father said you have to work it out among yourselves who's Cain and who's Abel, yeah, and have the humility to recognize that. Anyway, so because of the fall then, all human beings inherited fallen nature. It's not only Cain who has a monopoly on fallen nature. Yeah? Fallen nature is just misdirected original nature. There's not such a thing as original nature and fallen nature. It's just we have human nature which has become corrupted and misdirected. And both Cain and Abel have fallen nature. So we looked at the original nature of Cain and Abel, the original nature of the older brother and the younger brother. So let's have a look at the fallen nature of the older brother and the younger brother. So here, you got a younger brother, and this younger brother is really hard to love. The reason he's hard to love is because he's really arrogant. He's cleverer than his older brother, he can't respect his older brother, he goes around being obnoxious and arrogant and, is disrespectful to his older brother and makes fun of his older brother, etc., etc. So it's very hard then for the older brother to love the younger brother because the younger brother is very hard to love. Older brother then can't love Abel, can't love his younger brother because the younger brother is very arrogant. And because he's so arrogant, then it's very hard for the older brother to respect the younger brother, even if the younger brother is better at maths than him or playing the violin or anything at all. Because the younger brother is so arrogant, it's very hard for the older brother to respect the younger brother. And in order to do that, he has to really swallow a lot and pray a lot and take many deep breaths before he wants to just beat up his younger brother. And then, supposing, the older brother is able to love his younger brother despite all this, and to recognize, actually, my younger brother's really good at maths, even though he's so arrogant about it and boastful about it, and I need some help with my maths. And he asks the younger brother, and the younger brother doesn't want to help. So, of course, it's very hard if someone like this, hard to love and arrogant, it's very hard to want to receive advice from them. Even though you know they're better than you and can help you, it's very hard to want to be guided and helped by them. And then the younger brother's very uncooperative, and so they both don't want to work together. And so they fall out with each other. They're not friends with each other. Yeah? And you can see this within families, you can see this all over the place. Brothers, sisters, they fall out with each other. And often it's because they both have fallen nature. There's a fallen nature of the younger brother, or Abel, and the fallen nature of the older brother, or Cain. Yeah? So if we think about it, when we look at the story of Cain and Abel, you can say the younger brother, Abel, had bags of fallen nature. Yeah? As Father said, Abel mustn't be arrogant. Abel has to be humble. So Father explained in great detail how Abel was so arrogant that it's not surprising that Cain killed him, to be perfectly honest. Yeah? Because Abel was really hard to love, very arrogant, not at all helpful, and very uncooperative. And so that stimulated Cain's fallen nature. And it became very hard for Cain to see Abel from God's point of view, to love him, very hard to respect him, didn't want to listen to him, be guided by him, and didn't want to cooperate and work together. So we can say Cain certainly had lots of fallen nature, and he killed Abel, and at the end of the day, there's no justification for sin. That's really important. It doesn't matter how arrogant somebody is, there's no justification for murder. Yeah? You can't, if you kill somebody and you're taken to court and the judge says, why did you kill him? Because he was so arrogant. Is that an excuse? No. No excuse for murder. There's no justification for sin. It doesn't matter how much fallen nature and how arrogant and provocative and nasty the other person has. It doesn't justify murdering or killing that person. Yeah. Whereas if you talk to some murderers, sometimes you watch this on television, some murderer says, they're asked, why did you kill this person? And the response is, he had it coming to him. He deserved it because he behaved in that way. Yeah, that's like the original Cain. Am I my brother's keeper kind of thing. Okay, so we've got these two different dimensions here to this relationship. Cain is the older brother, Abel is the younger brother. If the older brother is better at something, which is often the case, then the relationship is relatively peaceful usually. Yeah, it becomes much more intense if Abel, is younger and is relatively better at Cain than something. Yeah, when the younger is better than something, it's more intense, this relationship, and that's what we see very often in these stories in Genesis. Okay, so we're talking about fallen nature here. So who is my Abel? Father says you have to work it out for yourself. And Father said the best way to remove fallen nature is to serve millions of people as your Abels. If someone cannot recognize the value of your serving him this way, his blessing be transferred from him to you. The Father said, the best way to overcome fallen nature is to serve millions of people as your Abels. In other words, to see every single human being from God's point of view, and to think about what can I learn from every single person. I remember when Wonpil Kim in 1976, I think it was, he was living in England, and we had a very crude and wrong understanding of Cain and Abel. Anyway, so one day, he was listening to members talking about these things, and they said to Wonpil Kim, how do you tell if you're Cain or Abel? And Wonpil Kim said, I never thought about that before. I always think I'm Cain. I'm older than you. You're all my Abels, and I want to learn from you all. Yeah, that's the way he was. Yeah, that's the way it is. He was actually putting into practice what Father taught. He said, I'm the older brother. Therefore I'm Cain. you're all younger than me, and there's always lots I can learn from you. And so you're my able, and I want to listen to you, I want to learn from you. And again, Father said the ideal of unification be fulfilled when you treat everyone as you're able. And again, there are lots of stories about this, about messiahs. There's one Jewish story. There was a rabbi, and he had lots and lots of disciples. And one day the rabbi said to all his disciples, I just found out the Messiah is on the earth. And all his disciples are really excited. Wow, the Messiah has finally come. The Messiah is on the earth. That's fantastic. Who is it? And the rabbi said, I don't know. And so all his disciples said, well, what should we do? And the rabbi said, go and treat everybody as if they were the Messiah. That's what Father taught. Go and treat everybody as if they're your able. Treat everyone as if they're your Messiah. Treat everybody as a person from whom you can hear God's voice and from whom you can learn. And often you'll see the greatest scholars are like that. Often the greatest scholars are really humble. They don't do a lot of talking. They just like listening to their pupils and their students to see if they got any new ideas. So again, Father said, if you examine your daily life, there are times when you're able-like and times when you're Cain-like. Between morning and evening on any given day, or even within 1 hour, the dynamics of the Cain-Abel relationship are working. So it's not fixed. It's not that one person's Cain, or one person's Abel, or that you're Cain in one moment. Or it's varying all the time. So, for example, in one relationship, you may be able to a person because you're better at maths than them. So you're helping them with their maths. But then in the afternoon, you go and play golf, and they're better at golf than you. So they're able, and you're Cain. Yeah, all these things can be changing all the time in these relationships. It's not fixed. Oh, this is my able, that's my Cain. It's just changes all the time between who's younger, who's older, who's better at something, who's worse at something. The Father said all directions, front and back, left and right, up and down, all has something to do with the Cain-Abel relationship. So up and down relationship, that's like a relationship between us and our parents. Usually parents are older. It's a position of Cain, also got a lot more knowledge and understanding. They've been around a lot longer. So they're position able because they can teach their children. And usually, it's like that. Parents usually know more and they teach their children, and you go and ask your parents for how to do something. In the modern world, it's kind of much more complicated. Because when it comes to computers and social media and everything, parents don't know as much as the young children do. And, sometimes I'm not very good at the computer. And sometimes my children say, did they even have televisions when you were young? And it's very difficult for a young person to teach an elderly person, how to do something. It's very easy. Oh, why are you so slow? Why can't you understand it? Why can't you just grasp? Why is it so difficult? Why can't you just listen to what I'm saying and understand it immediately? Why do you have to keep asking me over and over again to explain the same thing? Yeah. So in the position of a young person who's like in the position of younger brother, in the position of able, lots of information, knowledge, it's very hard to be humble, and to be patient, And then, of course, it's very hard for the older person then to not want to sort of, get angry and upset and et cetera, et cetera. So that relationship as well is kind of more intense when it's like that. Also back and front, leader, follower, sometimes the leaders know best, sometimes the followers know best. So often I found, as a leader, often enough, but usually I found that most of the people I'm supposed to be leading had better ideas than me. And so good leaders always interested in finding out who on my team has the best ideas. Let's follow that person's ideas, Let's listen to that person, follow their ideas, because they got the best ideas. And, the same left and right and working together with people. All these things are like that, something to do with the Cain and Abel relationship, which is not fixed, it changes. Sometimes the leader's able, got a better idea, maybe younger, in which case he has to have if there's a leader who's younger, in that sense, like in the able position, then they have to be really humble in the way that and a good younger brother or sister in the way they speak to the members or the people who are on their team who are much older than them. They have to treat them, You speak to them that way. Can't think, well, I'm the leader, therefore I'm going to treat you in this way. They're very complicated, these things. Anyway, so Father said lots of things about this. Any two of you in a relationship with Cain and Abel, who loves the other more will be in the Abel position. To define which one is Cain, which one is Abel, this is in terms of fallen nature. The one who is struck is Abel, the one who strikes is Cain. Even if you call out rudely to someone who's brought no harm to you, you become Cain relative to that person. And then again, Father said, the person who lives most fully for the sake of others is the one who's closest to me and to the central figure position. If we have some question about whether to listen to one leader or another, you can evaluate them yourself according to this standard. You can decide yourself which leader is more Abel-like than another. Who lives for the sake of other people more? Whichever leader fulfills that standard better is the one to whom you should listen. You can decide which one you can get spiritual advice and guidance from. Yeah, you choose, you decide. That's what Father said. Of course, whenever I heard Father saying this, I thought, that's impossible. That's not the way the Unification Church functions. That's not the way our leaders speak and tell us things. Yeah. So often I would listen to Father, or read Father's speeches, and I said, there's a huge gap between what is written, what Father said and taught, and what my own personal experience was. And again, Father said, there's no established seniority within our system. No matter who a person is or what position he has, if he's living for the sake of others more than anyone else, then he should be the center of the whole movement. Yeah, nothing to do with what your title is or your position is. The person who's loving the most, living most for the sake of others, should be the one who should be the center in that sense. Doesn't mean they're the leader, but they're the center. Therefore, because of this standard, there's no place for factions or divisions within our church. Anyway, he said that in 1983. We don't determine our leaders by vote, but by asking our consciences. Which person is living most for the sake of the country and for God? Your own conscience can answer that question for you. And actually, that's supposed to be the basis of democracy. Democracy is supposed to function like that, by vote. And what the electorate is supposed to do, they're supposed to have two candidates, and they listen to the candidates, they evaluate the candidate's character, they evaluate the character's policies, and they should vote according to their conscience. Not according to, which one has got the best policies for me, but which one has the best policies for the country, yes? May not be best, this person might not be best for me, but my conscience says this person and his policies are best for the country. So that's the basis of democracy. People should be educated and they should vote according to their conscience. And that's why there's a saying, God is the one who speaks through the popular vote. So let's see, this is when Father sent missionaries out to 120 nations in 1975. This is one of the questions from one of the missionaries. The Father, I'd like to know if there's special roles for Germans, Japanese, and Americans, for example. Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, etc. So this person wanted to know, of these three nationalities that have been sent out, is one of these nationalities Cain, and is one of these nationalities Abel? So, we should all be uniting around and following one as opposed to another. So Father said this, Father does not think that way. Father doesn't think like that. The application of the Cain-Abel relationship is often misused or misinterpreted. There is no Cain and Abel. You are three brothers and sisters, natural leaders, periodically emerge, of course. Then you pray centering on God and everything is going to be okay. You're worrying unnecessarily and too soon. So again, within our movement, there was this idea, so-and-so, because of their nationality or because of their position, they are Cain or they are Abel. That's not how Father understood this thing. He said these things will emerge naturally. Naturally, one person other people will agree this person is the best at doing this, is the better leader. Naturally, that person will emerge in that sense as the Abel. You can't designate Cain and Abel, because you can't say this person's better than that person's worse. Father said Cain decides who's Abel. You can't appoint somebody to be Cain or appoint somebody to be Abel. You can appoint somebody to be a leader, but you can't appoint an Abel. Anyway, it's lots of confusion. This is 1978. Aren't you teaching a principle I do not teach when you say I'm able because I'm a church leader? You're Cain, you're my member. Cain obeys Abel. This is the principle, so obey. So that was often the way it worked. Person would say, I'm the leader, I'm Abel, you're all my Cains, therefore you have to obey me and you have to unite with me. But actually, Father said there is no such principle. Yeah? That is not the principle of Cain and Abel. A person who does not fulfill its mission and become an embodiment of love is not able. Yeah? That's what I said, the one who loves the most. So you may be the leader and not a very loving person, but you're still the leader and have the responsibilities as a leader, and you're just not able. Somebody else may be the able. Again, Father said, I do not know where this strange thought that Abel is the central figure and in a position to command came from. I don't know how it crept into our movement. Many young members have left the church because of their leaders. And to be honest, I remember during the early 80s, all kinds of things took place, and many of my friends, they left. And to be honest, one of the reasons why they left is because of the misunderstanding of this Cain and Abel principle. It really damaged so many people in their emotional life, their spiritual life. Instead of people being helped to overcome their fallen nature, actually people's fallen nature became stronger. The leaders' fallen nature became stronger, became arrogant. Members' fallen nature became stronger, became resentful. And that's why a lot of people left. It's dreadful what happened. And that's why, to be honest, so many people left and hardly anyone joined since then in the West. Okay, this is Young Eun Kim. She was one of the earliest members. She was from Yeowa Women's College. She was a theologian, Christian, and she was the first theologian in the Unification Church and lecturer at the seminary. She's the first missionary to Britain and to Europe, first missionary to America. And so at the beginning of the seminary in 1977, this was her speech. As you all must be well aware, the Abel-Cain model can easily be misused and often has been to foster an egotistical authoritarianism. When people lack inner spiritual power, they resort to external things like their titles, positions, or regulations in order to exercise influence. They try to force obedience rather than convincing people to cooperate voluntarily. Such coercive methods only arouse resentment and sooner or later make the leader despised rather than respected. There's been this misunderstanding of the Cain-Abel relationship has been there right from very early on. So Father said, I'm going to stop in a moment. Again, so many things, you can look up these quotes yourself, they're all in Father's speeches. Among the members of the Unification Church, what kind of person is Cain? Those who raise their heads high and order others around are Cain. And who's Abel? Those who are trying to complete their responsibility are Abel. Even when you're speaking, the one who speaks words that are beneficial is Cain. The one who speaks words that harm others is sorry, I got that the wrong way around. Just as God loves fallen man, so what's the responsibility to Abel? Abel must have the heart of love towards Cain and restore him at the risk of his life. And that's really important. Yeah, if you're better at something than somebody else, then you have to find a way to help to reach that person and to be able to teach them. Yeah, if you're better than someone, you shouldn't look down upon them. If you're better at something than somebody, you shouldn't look down on them. You should think, okay, how can I have the heart to help this person to understand this? Yeah. So Abel has to help Cain to overcome his fallen nature in that sense, even at the risk of his own life. Abel's supposed to shed blood and tears to open the way through which Cain can survive. This is the way the precious thing, the foundation of victory is. How much did all of you fulfill the responsibility of Abel for the sake of members? Sacrificing the sake of that one life. This is about witnessing. We know we're younger, we know more how to witness and present the principle, witness with his heart to bring people. You must reflect and answer yourself the question, how much have you exerted yourself to raise the life of one person, considering it's the ultimate goal of your life? All right, so the relationship we're focusing on here, as I said, it's a relationship, restoring the relationship between Adam and the archangel. So we saw the first attempt at doing that yesterday in Adam's family, between Cain and Abel, and how that didn't work out. That both of them had somewhat fallen nature. The result was actually a disaster. So the next attempt that we look at is this one, the relationship between Jacob and Esau. And so, yeah, Isaac and Rebekah, I'm not going to go into their story very much. Anyway, they got married, and it took a long, long time before Rebekah fell pregnant, and she was able to have children. And when she was pregnant, it was a really painful pregnancy, and she said to herself, if I realized it was going to be as painful as this, I wouldn't have been praying for it all these years. And then she had some kind of experience with God and some kind of realization or revelation or whatever, that 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger. Now, it's kind of interesting that if you actually, this is in English, if you actually go to the Hebrew, it's much more ambiguous about who is serving whom. Okay, so move on from here. So what's being restored here is, as I said, the relationship between the archangel and Adam. So Adam had to win the respect of the archangel to become the Lord of creation, but he didn't do that. So Jacob, in the position of Adam, has to restore the birthright by winning the respect of Esau in the position of the archangel and become the elder brother, the head of the family. So he can never become older than Esau, but he can become the head of the family, which is what he tries to do. So where do the problems start? The boys grew up. It says in the Bible that Esau was a hairy man, big muscles, and Jacob was a smooth-skinned. The boys grew up. Esau became a skillful hunter and a man of the outdoors, but Jacob was a mild man who stayed at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So you can see right at the very, very beginning there, you have a problem. Yeah, father loves Esau, who's his favorite. Rebekah loves Jacob, and Jacob is Rebekah's favorite. And so if you feel that your mum loves one of your brothers more than you, it's really painful. Yeah, leads to all kinds of emotions and feelings. And so it might be, think about this. You know, Rebekah then, what was going on here? She felt from this revelation, this dream, this, the elder shall serve the younger. Yeah, so she felt it's the younger son who is the one who's closest to God. And also the younger son was the one who liked staying at home and helping out his mummy. He was a mummy's boy. He liked being in the kitchen and helping, doing all this, that, and the other. So Rebekah loved Jacob more than she loved Esau, partly also based upon this sort of dream or revelation that she had. So, of course, I think that was a cause of many problems in the relationship between the 2 brothers, and all kinds of jealousies and all kinds of things. And so maybe that's why, we'll look and see how this developed. Anyway, as they grow up, Isaac told his sons about the birthright. You might wonder, what's the birthright? So this is the right to be the head of the family when the parents die. So generally, this belongs to the oldest son. So normally, when the father dies, the head of the family dies, then the oldest son normally becomes the next head of the family. Yeah. And so Isaac told them about that. And anyway, so Jacob thought to himself, I wish I could have the birthright. I would love to have the birthright because I like to be the head of the family. And apparently Esau said to Isaac, well, what's it mean to be the head of the family? And Isaac said, well, things like leading the family in religious prayers and this, and this. And Esau thought, oh, not really interested in that kind of thing myself. But Jacob was interested in that kind of thing, much more religiously and spiritually orientated. Anyway, so Jacob's thinking to himself, how can I get the birthright? So one day, Jacob was cooking a stew, and Esau came in from the field hungry. Esau said to Jacob, give me some of that stew, I'm starving. Jacob said, let's trade. My stew for your rights as the firstborn. Esau said, I'm starving. What good is a birthright if I'm dead? Jacob said, first swear it to me. In other words, give it to me in writing, with a lawyer's stamp or something like that. And he did it. On oath, Esau traded away his rights as the firstborn. And Jacob gave him bread and lentil stew. He ate and drank, got up and left. That's how Esau gave away his rights as the firstborn. So you can see Esau's a very impulsive person. He ate, drank, got up and left without giving a second thought to what he'd done, selling his birthright. Yeah, didn't really understand what it was that he was doing. So if we think about this, which one is the more intelligent of the two? I would say Jacob's the more intelligent of the two. A bit kind of tricky, a bit kind of crafty, and he got a really good deal here. He bought the birthright just for a bowl of soup. Okay, so Jacob didn't steal the birthright from Esau, he bought it. Now you have to think about this. Did Esau have to sell it? So Esau comes into the kitchen and says to Jacob, I'm starving, give me some food. And Jacob said, well, this is the price, your birthright. So Esau didn't have to sell it. He could have thought to himself, well, that's a bit expensive. Maybe I'll just wait 5 minutes, make myself a peanut butter and jam sandwich, and then I'll have something to eat. But he didn't. He was so starving, he was just dominated by how to put something into his belly. And as soon as his belly was full, he got up and walked off. Yeah. So he wasn't that kind of person. Very, very impulsive, not terribly reflective in this kind of way. Nothing wrong with him. It's that was just his character. Yeah. So Jacob then bought the birthright. So he ends up now with the birthright. Nothing unethical about this. But then you have to ask yourself, well, is this the best way for Jacob to get the birthright? Is this the best way for him to get it? Did he win Esau's love and respect, such that Esau said, actually, you're much better than me. You deserve to be the heir instead of me. Nothing like that in the conversation, is there? So if you think about it, what should have happened? That's what happened. That's what the Bible said happened. But just because it happened, it doesn't mean it should have happened. There's no predestination, no determinism. All the time, people are making choices, and they could have made other choices. So it could have worked out differently. So let's try and imagine how the story might have gone in a better way, based upon the original nature. So of the two, as I said, Jacob was cleverer than Esau. Esau went out hunting, but often he came back hungry. It wasn't the first time he came back hungry because he hadn't caught anything. So you can imagine then it must have been rather frustrating for Jacob. Jacob was making lentil soup. You might think, well, why lentil soup? And actually Esau said according to the Midrash, Esau said to Jacob, why are you making Dad such rubbish food, lentil soup? Dad's not a vegetarian. He's not vegan. He likes meat. And Jacob said, well, the reason why he's eating lentil soup is because grandfather died. Abraham died. And that's why he's eating such humble food, because he's, mourning the death of Abraham. And Esau didn't have a lot of respect for that. Anyway, so you can imagine then, Jacob often probably got a bit frustrated because Esau's supposed to be providing the meat for the roast, and he wasn't catching much game. So you can imagine that Jacob might have not had much respect for Esau. Might have thought, my older brother, he's so stupid. He's probably very lazy. He probably goes out hunting and falls asleep, or he just lies there sunbathing, or maybe went out drinking. That kind of thought. You can easily imagine Jacob thinking like that. But let's think about how Jacob should have reacted. How should Jacob have treated his older brother? Well, first of all, as it says in the Bible, Esau was a hairy man and Jacob was smooth-skinned. So obviously he had a very, very different kind of physique. And Esau was the one who went out hunting and Jacob stayed at home and did the cooking. So Jacob should have said to Esau, Esau, I really respect you. I really admire you. I can't imagine going out hunting. I'm scared. You're so brave. You go out hunting where there's bears and lions and wild animals. And I really look up to you. You've got such big muscles and such a hairy chest. And I really look up to you and respect you. Yeah, that you do what I can't imagine doing because I'm just not me. So if Jacob looked up to his older brother and hero worshipped his older brother like that, how would Esau felt towards Jacob? He would have loved, in that way, Jacob may make himself very lovable by looking up to his older brother. And then Esau would easily have loved his younger brother. Yeah, because he was looking up to him. And that would have made Esau want to work harder and be more successful at going hunting. He wouldn't have wanted to let down his younger brother. That's the way these things work. He wouldn't have wanted to let down his younger brother. Okay, at the same time, as I said, Jacob was cleverer. So at the same time, he would have noticed, actually, my older brother goes out hunting, but sometimes he comes back without having caught anything. I wonder how I could help him. And Jacob, who's cleverer, could have thought, well, let's try and think, how might I be able to help Esau to be a more successful hunter? And maybe came up with an idea. And because he was very lovable and also very humble, he would have said something like this to Esau one day. Esau, I know you're a great hunter, but I notice sometimes you come back without having caught any game. I was thinking about how I might help you, and I came up with an idea. But because you're much more experienced at these things than I am, I'd like to see what your opinion of my idea is. Then Esau, who loved Jacob and who respected Jacob because he see Jacob was really intelligent and clever, would say to Jacob, oh, tell me, what is your idea? Then Jacob would humbly offer his idea to Esau and say, Esau, well, I was thinking, how about digging a big hole in the ground near where all the animals go, and then covering the hole with sticks and leaves, and then hiding in a bush and waiting till a cow falls into it. Then you can easily kill it, and then we can have enough meat for a month. And then Esau would think, wow, I never thought of that before. What an intelligent, clever younger brother I have. And then he would say to Jacob, please explain to me in more detail about it. Yeah. Original nature of Cain wants to be guided by Abel. And then Abel would share all his ideas and things. And then Esau would say, why don't we go and do it together? And so they would cooperate. They'd go into the meat business together. They'd corner the market in the Middle East, providing halal and kosher meat. Yeah. And they go into business. And after a while, you would imagine Esau would be thinking to himself, I'm the older brother, but to be perfectly honest, my younger brother is so much more intelligent than I am. He's much cleverer than me. He's much wiser than me. He's the one who runs the business. Actually, I think when Dad dies, it'd be much better if he becomes the head of the family instead of me. And then you can imagine Esau going along and saying to Isaac, look, Dad, I know I'm the oldest, but to be perfectly honest, I'm a bit slow. I'm strong and et cetera, but my younger brother, Jacob, he's much cleverer than me. He's much wiser than me, much more intelligent than me. I think it'd be much better if he becomes the head of the family when you die. I'll support him. I'll be the muscle, but I want to give him my birthright. Yeah. And that's the way it should have been. Jacob should have won the birthright from Esau by winning Esau's love and respect. Yeah. That's the way it should have been. So Jacob then, he got the birthright, he bought the birthright, but he didn't win Esau's love and respect. Anyway, the years roll by, and then Isaac's getting old, as we know, and he's going blind. And then he calls Esau in one day, his oldest son, and he says to his oldest son, I want to bless you. I'm an old man, he said. I might die any day now. Do me a favor. Go out and hunt some game. Then make me a hearty meal, the kind that you know I like, and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Rebekah was eavesdropping as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. Yeah, so Rebekah overheard. And then Rebekah said to Jacob, now my son, listen to me. Do what I tell you. Go and get me 2 young goats, and I'll make a nice meal, the kind your father loves. Then you'll take it to your father. He'll eat and bless you before he dies. But mother, Jacob says, my brother Esau's a hairy man and I have smooth skin. What happens if my father touches me? He'll think I'm deceiving me. Well, not just think, he actually is. I'll bring down a curse on myself instead of a blessing. If it comes to that, said his mother, I'll take the curse upon myself. Now just do as I say. Go and get the goats. So what do we think about all of this kind of event? Let's think about it. What is going on here? So Rebekah tells Jacob to take Esau's blessing. And Jacob dresses up, makes the food, and goes in and deceives his father and receives Esau's blessing. And Jacob said to his father, he lied to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. Again, the Hebrew is a bit more complicated than that. It's very ambiguous. He just states the fact Esau is his firstborn. It's translated like this. So if we try and analyze this, what's going on here? Sometimes people think, well, that's the way it's supposed to have happened. But actually, I think this is not the way it's supposed to have happened. So if we analyze this from the point of view of the four great realms of heart, how's the relationship between Jacob and Esau? How's the relationship with the siblings? Well, it's very problematic. Obviously, there's not much love lost between Jacob and Esau. They don't get on with each other very well. But then let's think about what was the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah. So how did Rebekah find out what Isaac's plans were? She overheard Isaac telling Esau, go make a meal for me, go and hunting, make me a meal, and I'll give you my blessing. So how should Rebekah have heard what Isaac's plans were? Well, they should have woken up in the morning, done their Chong Song conditions, and had a conversation about what they were going to do that day. And they would say, and Isaac would say, well, actually, I was thinking of blessing Esau today. And Rebekah would say, well, why would you want to do that? And then Isaac would give his reasons. And then Rebekah might say something like this, well, don't you think we should bless them together? Bless Esau together? You know what I'm saying? And so obviously there's a problem in the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah obviously weren't communicating very well with each other. Rebekah didn't know what Isaac's plans were. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why things went wrong, lack of communication. So I discovered this one day when we had some friends round. And completely out of the blue, my wife said, I love listening to my husband, William, talking to his friends on the telephone. And I thought, why does my wife like listening to me talking to my friends on the phone? So I said to her, why do you like listening to me talking to my friends on the phone? And my wife, Ruth, said, that's the first time I find out what your plans are. Okay, that doesn't sound so good. That sounds a little bit like the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah, a lack of communication. One of my wife's favorite words is communication. My wife's second favorite word is together. Oh, Isaac and Rebekah should have blessed their sons together, not Isaac blessing separately. Okay, this is a problem in the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah. They're not communicating. So when Rebekah overheard what Isaac said to Esau, what should she have done next? Okay, so the whole of these stories, all about people making moral choices and decisions. Yeah, what happened is what happened, but just because it happened doesn't mean it should have happened like that. Okay, so Rebekah having overheard what Isaac said, what should she have done next? She should have gone into Isaac and said, hi, Isaac, honey, have you got any plans for this afternoon? And Isaac would have said, oh yeah, I was going to bless Esau. Oh, why didn't you tell me about that? Oh, it didn't occur to me. I just, thought I'd do it. Well, can we talk about it? Maybe we should do these things together. And Isaac might think, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Wives are usually right. And that's what it should have happened. Not Rebekah coming in to see Isaac with a frying pan and say, why didn't you tell me what you're going to do? It's, one has to deal with these things sensitively. Okay, so Rebekah didn't do that. Instead of doing that, she went behind Isaac's back. So by going behind Isaac's back, it means she's not treating Isaac with respect. She's treating Isaac very disrespectfully by not going in to talk to Isaac about it. But actually, obviously, she must have thought Isaac is wrong. Or maybe she thought, Isaac, my husband, is a silly old fool. He's going to make a terrible mistake here. He's going to bless Esau when I had a dream that actually Jacob should be the one getting the blessing, not Esau. So she came up with her own plan. And she didn't discuss it with Isaac either. She came up with her own plan based upon her own dream or revelation or her own intuition or something, that actually Jacob was the one who's more worthy, the one who deserved the blessing more than Esau. And so she came up with a plan to go and get Jacob to do what he did, to go and receive the blessing. So if we look at the relationship between Rebekah and Jacob then, so Rebekah told Jacob what to do. You're the one who should get the blessing. You deserve it more than your older brother. And Jacob said, well, how am I going to do that? Well, but what should Jacob have done? He should have said to his mum, Mum, have you discussed it with Dad? Yeah. So Jacob's obviously, from what he said, Jacob was very uncomfortable with this idea. He didn't want to go and deceive his father. He didn't want to take the risk of getting cursed by his father. So he should have followed his conscience. His conscience told him, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. And he should have said to Rebekah, go and talk to Dad about it. I don't mind getting Dad's blessing, but please go and discuss it with Dad. Yeah, that's what Jacob should have done. So, but Jacob then was afraid of getting cursed. And then Jacob then gave in and did what his mum told him to do. So Jacob then wasn't following his conscience. He was just allowing himself to be dominated by his mother, which wasn't the right thing to do. And then so did Jacob do the right thing? I would say no. And then, go back a bit. And so Jacob said, well, if I do this, maybe I'll get cursed. And then Rebekah said to Jacob, look, if Dad finds out, I'll take the blame. And then Jacob went in and did it. Now, the point is here, can you take responsibility for somebody else's sins? You can't do that. I'm just following orders. Jacob, my mum told me to do it. Don't blame me. She said she'll take responsibility for my sin and my mistake and what I've done. That makes sense? So is Jacob acting in a mature way? No. Jacob's not acting in a mature and responsible way. He's not following his conscience. He's thinking his mum can take the blame if something goes wrong. That's not not the actions of a mature person. So you can say there's something problematic going on here. So Jacob and Esau haven't overcome their fallen nature, lack of communication between Isaac and Rebekah. Rebekah doesn't ask Isaac. She doesn't respect him. Rebekah dominates Jacob, which is also wrong. Jacob doesn't follow his conscience. And then Jacob deceives his father Isaac. So is it nice to go in and lie and deceive your dad? Not very nice. Is anything being restored here? If we look at this, what can you say about the four great realms of heart in this family? You can say there's a problem in the conjugal relationship between Isaac and Rebekah. There's a problem in the parent-child relationship between Rebekah and Jacob. There's also a problem in the one that, each has their own favorite. That's also a problem. There's also a problem in the relationship between the siblings. Sibling relationship's not right. And also, Jacob doesn't follow his conscience. Yeah. So all the relationships in four great realms of heart, they're all dysfunctional. And that's why it's possible for something to go wrong. That's why it's possible for Satan to invade. Yeah, Satan invades when there's a lack of communication, people don't cooperate, lack of transparency, people going behind each other's backs, people telling lies. Now, does deception, does that restore anything? Not at all. Yeah. Is theft so what Jacob did, he stole Esau's blessing. Is theft justified? No. God never asked people to do things that are unethical. Is deception justified? No. Deception is just repeating what happened at the fall. Yeah. So we can see here this relationship between husband and wife is problematic. Don't have time to talk about this very much. So the man needs the respect of his wife. So Isaac then, he needed Rebekah's respect. But for some reason, obviously that seemed to be lacking. And so Isaac felt uncomfortable. He didn't communicate with his wife. At the same time, a husband needs to love his wife. So maybe Rebekah felt unloved. I don't know. So being a good subject, which the husband's supposed to be, is the one that gives love, yeah, to his wife, who needs to be loved. The woman needs the love of her husband, and at the same time, woman needs to respect her husband, and that's what it is to be a good object. So you can read books about this, the love and respect. but I'm not going to talk about this. So you might wonder, why is this? Why didn't Rebecca talk to Isaac? There's nothing clear in the Bible. One can just speculate. This is one little thing here. Isaac went to the field one evening to meditate. This is when he looked up, he saw camels approaching. This is when Rebecca came from Haran. Rebecca also looked up and saw Isaac. Okay. She got down from a camel and asked the servant, "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" "He is my master," the servant answered. In other words, Isaac, who was her future bridegroom. So she took her veil and covered herself. I mean, that's interesting. When she was with the servant, she was unveiled. But when when her future husband came, she took her veil and covered herself. I don't know what that means. I don't know much about feminine psychology. But there seems to be something there, something going on there. Maybe there's a big gap of age. Maybe she's awed by Isaac. Maybe Isaac didn't talk very much. Maybe Isaac spent a lot of time in meditation, didn't communicate very much. Maybe, this experience he went through with Dad of nearly getting put to death, maybe that was pretty traumatic. Maybe he spent a lot of his life thinking about that and meditating upon that profound event in his life. Maybe he didn't talk very much. I don't know. But obviously there's some issue, something in that relationship. Anyway, so let's analyze the story a little bit more. So what was the blessing that Isaac wanted to give to Esau, which Jacob stole? So this is what it says. "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." So if we look at this blessing, how significant is it? Well, what's it about? It's about may God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness. So it's about wealth. Lots of grain, lots of new wine. So it's about wealth, and it's about power. Nations bowing down to you, but particularly this: be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, those who bless you be blessed. So it's about wealth, and it's about power. So that's the blessing that Isaac wanted to give to Esau, and the blessing that Jacob stole from Esau. Not a lot of spiritual content in it, in my view. Wealth and power. Anyway, so Esau came back in after Jacob had gone out, and Esau came to his dad and said to his dad, "Look, here's the lunch I made. Eat it up, Dad." And then Isaac said, "Well, who was that who came in before, whose meal I already ate and whose blessing I gave?" And Esau said, "Oh, that must be my tricky brother Jacob. He tricked me out of my birthright, and now he's stolen my blessing." And then it says Isaac trembled with a great trembling. So Isaac then was deeply and profoundly shocked by what had happened. He trembled. Very rarely in the Bible does it describe people's emotions. He trembled with a great trembling and said, "Who then was it who hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate before you? Came and I blessed him, and he will be blessed." And Esau heard his father's words, and he cried out an intensely loud and bitter cry. Again, all the emotion and pathos is there. And he said to his father, "Bless me too, my father." So you can see, why was Isaac trembling? Because Isaac just understood what had happened, that Jacob had stolen his older brother's blessing. He could imagine how painful this would be for Esau, and he could imagine a repeat performance of Cain killing Abel in his own family, some Esau killing Jacob. And so for Esau, it's incredibly, Esau loved his father. Incredible filial piety, loved his father, and so the most precious thing he wanted to get from his father was his father's blessing. And now naturally Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing which his father blessed him, and Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father approaching, then I'll kill my brother Jacob." So you can see here, Esau's very different to Cain. Cain got angry, Cain lost his temper, Cain murdered his brother. Esau, on the other hand, has good mind-body unity. Esau is really angry. It's understandable that he's angry. How would you feel if your brother stole half your inheritance, no, not half your inheritance, if your brother stole your share of the inheritance, you'd be really angry and resentful and really, hurt and everything else. So it's only natural that Esau hated Jacob. You can't blame Esau for hating Jacob, honestly speaking. It's just a natural response, a natural reaction. But at the same time, even though this had happened, Esau didn't kill Jacob. He might have felt like killing him, but he didn't. Why didn't he kill him? Because he loved his father. So Esau was practicing filial piety. He thought, I don't want to break my father's heart by killing my younger brother, even though he deserves to be killed. I'm going to wait till dad dies out of respect for dad, and then I'll go, kill him. So Esau then practiced filial piety. He's a model of filial piety in that sense. Didn't want to break his father's heart. So there's a problem here. So all that's happened by Jacob stealing Esau's blessing, all that has happened is Esau has fallen nature, has become even stronger. And then we have this. And so Rebecca comes along, and Rebecca, when she finds out what's happened, Rebecca says to Jacob, look, Jacob, your brother's really angry with you. Go and stay with my brother, Uncle Laban, and when Esau's calmed down, then I'll send for you to come home again. And so Jacob says, okay, I'll go and stay with Uncle Laban, but before I go, I'm going to go and say goodbye to Dad. So Jacob goes into his father's tent, and Jacob says to Dad, look, Isaac, Dad, I'm going to go and stay with my Uncle Laban for a while, and I just want to come and say goodbye, and I'll see you later. And then Isaac says to Jacob, before you go, I want to bless you. And this is the blessing. May God Almighty bless you. This is the blessing Isaac gave to Jacob. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so you may take possession of the land where you now live as an alien, the land God gave to Abraham. So if we analyze this blessing, it's a profoundly spiritual and meaningful blessing. Fruitful and multiply and the land. This is the three blessings. These are the blessings God gave to Adam. These are blessings that God gave to Noah, the three great blessings. And at the same time, may you get the blessing given to Abraham. In other words, may you be the heir of Abraham and the covenant that God made with Abraham. So this is actually the birthright blessing. Jacob received the birthright blessing from Isaac. Yeah? Isaac blessed Jacob. So what went wrong? What went wrong is this. Jacob needed his blessing, the birthright blessing. Isaac knew Jacob has bought the birthright from Esau. And also Abraham told Isaac that Jacob is the one who's more qualified to be his heir. So Isaac wanted to give Jacob the birthright blessing. But at the same time, Isaac understood the relationship between the two brothers was really bad. And he realized, if I bless Jacob first, Esau's going to be really jealous. So he thought to himself, actually, I want to bless both of my sons. And so he thought to himself, well, if I bless Esau first and give Esau what he wants and the things that he desires, which is wealth and power, then Esau will be satisfied and Esau will be happy. Then when I give Jacob the birthright blessing, which is the one Esau should have received originally, then Esau won't be jealous, because Esau's heart's desire for wealth and honor and power will be fulfilled, and he won't be jealous that Jacob is getting a more significant birthright blessing. So Isaac wasn't a fool. Isaac was a very wise man. He had it all worked out in his head. The only mistake he made was this. He didn't communicate with Rebecca and explain to Rebecca what the plan was. And as I said, they should have given the blessing to Esau and Jacob together. So the problem was, Isaac had it all worked out in his head. He wasn't a fool like Rebecca thought he was, had it all worked out, but he didn't communicate with Rebecca for whatever reason. And then Rebecca went and came up with her own kind of plan, and the whole thing went totally AWOL. Well, it went totally wrong. Yeah. And so Jacob ended up not only with his own blessing, which he would have got anyway, because he had the birthright, but he ended up with Esau's blessing as well. And instead of helping Esau to overcome his fallen nature, all that happened, Esau's fallen nature, as the older brother, just became intensified, and he wanted to murder his younger brother. And, you know, you might think, well, this is just William Haynes. But anyway, fortunately, I found some, you know, I explained, talking about this for years, and people said, well, that's just your interpretation. So, well, okay, let's go and see what Father said. Anyway, this is what Mrs. Yu said. She's the wife of President Yu, who was the first president of the Korean Church, one of the first 3 disciples blessed by Father, and who's the author of the exposition of the divine principle. This is what she said in a commentary upon this story. Jacob tricked Esau twice in order to take Esau's elder sonship, once with lentil stew, and tricked him again when receiving Isaac's blessing. However, that actually wasn't the correct way according to the principle. In other words, Jacob shouldn't have done that. Had Jacob wanted to inherit the rights of the elder son, he should have served and behaved well to his older brother. Then the older brother's heart would have been moved, and he would have said, you are not only smarter than me, but better in every aspect, so you should be my elder brother. That's the whole story I told you about going into the meat business together. Yeah. If Jacob brought his older brother into natural subjugation like this, so much could have been saved in the course of indemnity. Yeah, so much could have been saved. So that story I told about going into the meat business is, basically what Mrs. Yu is saying here. And if you go back, Father also gave a speech about this. Oh yeah. So, I got the slides in the wrong order here. These slides should have come earlier. Okay, this is the mother-son bit. Try and squeeze this in. Since it was a mother, this is what it says in the Divine Principle book, since it's a mother and son who allows Satan to enter and bear the fruit of sin, according to the principle of restoration through indemnity, a mother and son must separate from Satan through their joint efforts. Okay, again, this is often misunderstood. So Rebecca, she should have restored Eve and Sarah's role by helping her sons to love each other. I'll talk about Sarah next week. But the reality is, Rebecca favored Jacob based upon her dream. So instead of helping them to get along with each other, didn't happen. She saved Jacob's life by sending him to Haran. So what's the role of Rebecca then? The role of a mother is like this. You know, sons, brothers often fight with each other. You know, they may be playing with Lego, and one brother, end up crying, and the mother comes along and says, well, why are you crying? And once the older son says, oh, he took my Lego and wouldn't give it back. And then says to the younger brother, well, what happened? Well, he snatched the Lego back from me. And, the big story. So the mother then unpicks the story and what the course of events was. And then she explains to one brother, if you want to play with your brother's toys, you need to ask permission. So say, please, can I play with your Lego? Or please, can I play with your car? And then she says to the other brother, if your brother says, please, can I play with your toys? It's really nice to share your toys. So you share with your brother, okay? But then when you want to have it back again, instead of snatching it, you say, okay, I'll let you play for it within an hour, but then please may I have it back again? And then when your brother asks for his toy back again, it's his toy, you should give it back. Okay, so now say sorry and forgive each other and go through a little role play. Yeah, so that's what should have happened. Eve should have done that with Cain and Abel. Rebecca should have done that with Jacob and Esau, but she didn't do that. The good thing she did, she saved Jacob's life by sending him to Haran. And again, you might think, well, this is just William Haynes making it up, because that's not what it says in the Divine Principle book. But actually, this is what Father said. Cain and Abel should work together, naturally together, as I explained, based upon their original nature. And because Eve initiated the fall, she should help them to cooperate as restitution, which I just explained about. This is the basis for mother and son cooperation, the providence. In the Bible, Jacob was in the position of Abel, and Esau was in the position of Cain. Rebecca, their mother, was in Eve's position. Since Eve bore Cain and Abel as a fruit of the fall, Rebecca was in a position to restore that by assisting Jacob to restore his heavenly position. So that's not to restore his heavenly position by helping him to steal his older brother's birthright, blessing, I mean. Not at all. It's about helping them to love each other and to resolve their relationship and be able to unite together. Again, as Father said, the way of the mother Eve is to unite Cain and Abel and bring them to Adam. So did Jacob as Abel really become one with Esau as Cain, thus subjugating Satan completely? Not originally. Jacob should have won his blessing in his native home in total harmony with Esau and not have had to go to Haran. So that's the kind of explanation I gave about winning his respect and going to the meat business and winning the birthright naturally, and then he would have got the blessing in the right way. However, he had to escape from the danger brought about by Esau's intention to kill him, thus the condition of enmity was not completed. So he shouldn't have had to go to Haran. That was just a result of making a mistake of stealing Esau's blessing, which is a result of the mistake of not really getting the birthright in the right way by winning Esau's love and respect.